So as we continue through with our marketplaces theme and topic for today, really interested to sort of look at the role that advertising plays within the context of that and understanding the ways that brands can tap into that to not only speak to their consumer, but also understand a lot more about who that consumer is at a really intimate level, and use those insights in order to drive stronger engagement. It's excited to have Scott Kelliher here from eBay. He's the head of US brand and ad partnerships. So Scott, thanks for joining us at Retail Innovation Week.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Cool. So, as we think about your role within eBay and where eBay kind of sits within the sort of marketplace landscape, how do you sort of see eBay, sort of differentiating itself with the sort of other competitors in the space?
Yeah. So first and foremost, thank you for having us. It's really a pleasure to be here. And then I'll dive into answer the question a little bit and say the thing about eBay that makes us unique is that we exist solely to power economic opportunity across the board. So our marketplace is a pure marketplace. We own no inventory. We partner with millions of sellers across the platform, from individuals to small, medium-sized businesses, all the way to some of the biggest brands on the planet. And we serve everyone in between and do our best to treat them all equally. So there's currently roughly 1.6 billion listings on our platform right now. We get in the United States just over 100 million users every month. Globally, that number almost doubles. And that's really that the fact that we don't compete and we don't ever take an inventory position is one of the things that really makes us unique. And we're also really happy to double down on that empowering economic opportunity component. And as we've been talking a lot about the changes that have been occurring in retail over the last year, one of the things that I would be remiss if I didn't call out was a program that eBay launched earlier this year called Up and Running. And this is one thing we saw when the lockdown first started. There were tons and tons of businesses on Main Street all over the world, and particularly in this case, the United States, that were struggling. They couldn't figure out how to keep their doors open and keep their merchandise flowing. And we said, hey, this is why we're here. We launched a program called Up and Running to empower those stores to bring their inventory onto eBay's platform and help them get started as an e-commerce partner or an omni-channel partner and get through this. And then even further on down the line, we launched a program to offer some of those small businesses grants to say, hey, we can help you become a more viable digital retailer than you may have ever needed to have been in the past. And we've got tens of thousands of applications for those pieces. So that was kind of a long answer to a pretty simple question, I think, but it gets to the essence of what eBay is all about and why we continue to be successful 25 years later.
Well, I mean, that number of listings is incredible. I mean, it's a staggering number. And then I love the sort of way that it fits into, and especially with the Up and Running program, but this sort of notion of powering a local economy or the smaller kind of sellers and getting them, up and running, getting into digital. So I think that's all really incredible.
Yeah, and make no mistake, though, we also work with some of the biggest brands on the planet, and they like us for the same reason, right? Because of that egalitarian effect. We do not compete. Like, we're not going to take the data that you see about what's selling and what's not and turn around and use it to compete with you. So everyone enjoys that same piece about you.
Awesome. And as you think about the some of that the things that the platform offers to sellers and brands, what is that sort of what does that value proposition look like?
Yeah. So it's about understanding how people shop. The ability to see from start to finish how they behaved when they're interacting with your product. How many listings do they look at? How many brands do they consider? How long does it take? What color is it? These are all things that really enhance the value to anybody who is selling on our platform. But the willingness to be transparent about that and the willingness to share that information is something that's fairly unique about eBay. And we think adds a lot of value to our partners. Again, the key here, and you will hear this come up in a lot of what I talk about, is these people selling on the platform need to be curious. And if they're curious, they can learn a lot about how people behave, which should then help them inform their businesses as to what inventory to stock, what types of inventory to bring online, how customers actually behave, how should you communicate with them, right? If I know that someone is considering 4 other brands every time they make my purchase, I need to make sure that my brand proposition is strong and that I differentiate and I stand myself out. If I'm only competing with, say, 1 other brand, I may not need that quite as much. But that curiosity and that willingness to test and learn is something that we can really help facilitate and are quite proud.
As you look at what's been happening on the sort of eBay platform over the past year, maybe you can talk to us about some of those sort of larger shifts that you're sort of seeing take place.
Yeah, it's really been very interesting. And I would say the first thing that we saw was a lot of what I would have said were ongoing trends get accelerated and really compressed. So I believe it was IBM did a study earlier this year that has said the shift to e-commerce accelerated and did 5 years worth of acceleration in the 1 year, right? It had to happen. People needed to shop from home. They needed to do that. And it was exciting to see e-commerce kind of step up to the challenge and be there to kind of assist. And from our perspective, we've seen it kind of play itself out in a number of different ways. So we're fresh into a brand new year of 2021. But one of the things that we saw earlier in the like holiday shopping period was people starting their shopping much earlier. They were afraid of not being able to get things shipped appropriately. They were more aware, so they were taking a longer time to evaluate. So in the number of key categories, we saw the duration of the purchase cycle extending because people were looking for good value. This has been a time, there's lots of discussions about economic uncertainty right now, and we saw that play out. People were looking for value and looking for a deal, and that manifests itself in them starting shopping for the holidays earlier than ever before. The number that I believe that we saw was 26% of our eBay shoppers had started their holiday shopping by the end of September. That's 25% of our shoppers, and we represent a big number of people. So for that many folks to have started this early in the year really shows how they've been rethinking and what they've been doing. And I don't expect that trend to go backwards anytime in the future. A couple of little fun ones for you. My personal favorite is how time is involved and how much time people are taking. So we saw a lot of buying journeys expanding. So people who are gamers, for example, everybody knew the PS5 was coming, the new Xbox, the new titles that go with, but they were taking longer to pull the trigger. Like, am I going to find it better priced here? Am I going to be able to get guaranteed delivery there? So they were taking longer. And this was something we saw over a number of different categories, but one that we saw it go in reverse was in fitness. We saw that category buying journeys compressed. I think people were constantly thinking to themselves, oh man, I've been snacking more, I'm home more, I'm stressed out more, and I need to get that fitness thing here now or I won't get started. Like I need to go now. So those buying journeys were happening a lot quicker. And just because we can do this type of thing, to the point of curiosity, how do people express that? The types of information that we can share is sometimes surprising. So one of the things that I would say is our entertainment enthusiasts, so those people who buy movies and movie paraphernalia and all that kind of stuff on eBay, the most popular color that they were buying changed from 2019 to 2020. I don't know what that means. And by the way, before you ask, the color of choice in 2020 was orange as opposed to brown in 2019. So again, I'm not really sure what that's meant to represent, but from our perspective, these are the types of things that we can help our partners know. We can tell you what the most popular colors are. So as you're thinking about the types of inventory to bring on, we can make sure it's on.
Well, I love that you mentioned the fact that you don't necessarily know what that means, and I think like the because it's some to admit that I think everyone wants to say that they have the answers to everything, and the being able to understand that and then helping them get to that sort of point of how that actually, what that means for their brand, I think is where the value actually comes in. And I think that's, as a partner, that's a really interesting place to be.
Well, I think that you're hitting on all the key words, right? You're hitting on this concept of learning, curiosity, and partnering. And if if you were to say, okay, so what does a brand do in this world, like to be better, more successful? You're really leaning on it right there, right? You have to be more curious. You have to lean on your partners and say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. Can you guys help me? Are there any signals that you may have? And vice versa. Be open to us coming with you, like, I don't know why that is, but maybe you guys can play something with it. And then, it also kind of changes the nature of how data gets shared, right? So we can share this type of stuff, but you should help us too. Like, share with us how your sales have been progressing. What have you seen? So that when we partner, again, back to that really important key word, we can build some of these things together. And I think, that has been a major change in what we saw from a marketer's perspective, is the willingness to partner and rethink, the duration of a test and learn. Like, if you try something and it fails in 24 hours, what did you actually learn? Nothing, right? You have to stick with it for a little bit longer and see, well, okay, so maybe the overall concept wasn't what we expected, but within it, we've learned a whole bunch of other things. And that, to me, has been one of the big changes for marketers.
That's awesome. I love that sort of that openness and willingness, and that, I think for me too, like, the relationships that are always the best are the ones where there is that sort of back and forth and the conversation that's happening. So, diving a little bit more into that sort of, brand marketing piece, where obviously consumers exist in a much more sort of fractured digital landscape now. So as you think about some of those, best practices, if you will, in terms of advertising, what are the things that kind of come to mind for you?
Yeah, so it's a fun one, right? It's kind of this really interesting blend of traditional marketing with kind of what's happening in the world today, right? You got to take advantage of full funnel opportunities, right? You have to think about what you can do to attract new customers, obviously, but then also retain your existing ones and continue to bring them new value. Because, to your point, the shopping ecosystem has been fractured like never before. The media ecosystem has been fractured, and there's all kinds of new brands popping up all over the place and kind of all the time. And those types of things are ones that we've seen. On a digital front, like, what are we seeing from an innovation perspective there? It's a lot more around, the deprecation of the cookie is coming, and how different companies are going to think about some of those things. Server to server technology, transparency around how you're using data and PII is clearly at the forefront of everyone's thoughts, and making sure that you understand why these things are all happening and are kind of important. To me, is kind of like the next step, is that partnership approach again, that, like, okay, how can we solve some of these things together? Like, what might you guys be able to do that we hadn't thought of on the server to server integration? If we were to do one, what happens? Those types of things have been really interesting.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. I love that curiosity and learning are sort of at the core of, how you are thinking about, sort of approaching 2021. I think it's just like a great place to be, and for brands and the folks in our audience, I think, like, having that openness and curiosity is, ultimately necessary to be successful, sort of moving ahead. So, Scott, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Pleasure. Great to see you, Scott.
All right. Thank you.